Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast Why You Do What You Do. The podcast that talks about human development and psychology to maybe help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. And last time we were talking about gender roles, but now we're going to start talking about division of domestic work and effects on the marriage. That is the number one fight amongst couples. Who's going to do the housework? Especially both work. In almost all known societies, women, even if they work full time, have primary responsibility for housework and child raising. And that's just the way it is. Because a lot of men are still old fashioned in their belief systems and think that's just woman's work and that's how it should be done. Now, thankfully, they're starting to catch on that, if you're not trying to run your wife into an early grave, if she's working full time and then has to do all this while you're sitting on your butt, you might want to help her out a little bit. However, the way couples divide breadwinning and household work and the psychological effects of those decisions vary, as they should, because each household is different, each situation is different. Like I said yesterday, I got a nephew who's quit work because his wife could make more money. And they say that the daycare would have been more expensive. I think they probably could have found a cheaper daycare, but they might have different standards than me. I don't know. But each household's different, so your decisions should be based on your household. The division of labor among dual income couples in U.S. society tends to be different from that in one paycheck families, because if both people are participating, there's kind of an inequality there. And if one is only participating, then that kind of leaves you on unequal footing. The father is likely to do more housework and childcare than the husband of a full-time homemaker, because the full-time homemaker figures, hey, she's here all day, what's she got to do but clean and cook and take care of the kids? And unfortunately, a lot of that still goes on. And to do more monitoring of older children's activities, especially in summer when school is not in session. Dad might find them something to do, There are a lot of people I know who sent their kids to camp. Our kids went to like little mini camps here in the city. So, we never had any big camp issues or anything like that. Nevertheless, the burdens of the dual earner lifestyle generally fall most heavily on the woman. In 1997, employed married men spent nearly 1 hour more on housework and 1/2 hour more with their children on work days than in 77. Yet the husbands still did only about 2/3 as much domestic work and childcare as employed married women. So women are still carrying the heaviest load. We're having to work and take care of the house and kids. So if your wife is seeming like maybe she's burnt out a little bit, maybe she is. Maybe you need to give her a break, help her out a little bit. The effects of a dual earner lifestyle on a marriage may depend largely on how husband and wife view their roles. So like I said, if you have a very traditional, backwards in my opinion, role of what men and women are and what they're supposed to do, then poor old mom, you're kind of the pack mule of that relationship. So unequal roles are not necessarily seen as inequitable, and it may be a perception of unfairness that contributes most to marital instability. So if mom thinks that it's an unequal burden, basically then it is in her mind. So that's something you would need to talk about and hash out, because if you don't talk about that, and a lot of women are good at the silent treatment, then that just keeps growing between you until it explodes. Like my husband says, I'm a simple man. You gotta tell me things simply. And that's probably true with most men. You gotta tell them, because they're not gonna figure it out. I was waiting for you to figure it out. I was waiting for you to think it. You know, they're not gonna. You're gonna have to spell it out for them. That's just a fact there, because their brains are different than ours. A national longitudinal survey of 3,284 women in two-income families found greater likelihood of divorce the more hours the woman worked, if she had a non-traditional view of marital roles. So if mom has a very traditional view, but knows she has to work, that might not bother her so much, you know. But if she has the view that she should be equal, to dad, and dad's not making it that way, then she's going to see that as, you're not pulling your weight. I'm going to work, making money, taking care of this household, raising these kids. Why do I need you? If you're not going to contribute around here, see ya, buddy. Why are you here? Given that men generally do less household work than women, an employed woman who believes in an equal division of labor is likely to perceive as unfair the greater burden she carries in comparison with her husband. Again, like I said, if mom thinks you're not contributing, why does she need you? And this perception of unfairness will probably be magnified the more hours she puts in on the job. So, like I said, if mom's winning the bread and taking care of the home and the kids, and you're just coming home and chilling on the couch, again, she's going to look at that and be like, why are you here taking up space? What spouses perceive as fair may depend on the size of the wife's financial contribution, whether she thinks of herself as a co-provider or merely as supplementing her husband's income. I'm definitely just supplementing my husband's income. Like I said, I just got a trickle coming in. I wish I was still capable of doing and having more than that, but I'm just not. I know it, and whatever other people know or can't figure out, that's kind of their problem. And the meaning and importance she and her husband place on her work. That's one of the problems my husband and I had in the past, because I wasn't out at a job making a bunch of money. He didn't feel like, anything I was doing was that important. He didn't feel like running the ministry and the charity, that wasn't important, because it wasn't, bringing in the same amount of money as him or more. You need more money. You need more money. Well, I have had several near-death experiences, and I have made promises, to God, saying, I know when I was younger, even though I got saved when I was 13, I wasn't exactly walking how I should have been, but you put this on my heart to do this, so if you let me hang around a little while, I'll do it. I know I can't go out like I used to in the community and do all this stuff, but I can do what I can do, and I'll do it. And I'm still here, so evidently he's not done with me yet. In nearly 1 in 4 dual earner households, the wife earns more than the husband. So, like I say, in my nephew's situation, the wife could make more, and I know a few cases like that. I know of some contractors who have a nurse for a wife, or a doctor for a wife, and she makes more than he does. In such households, women may have a greater say in family financial and career decisions. And of course, again, there's an equality issue there. That's something they'll teach you in couples counseling if you go. It's like, there has to be equality in the home. Just because you're making more money doesn't mean you're the boss. And just because, you're doing this other thing doesn't mean you're the boss. So, y'all got to be good to each other. It ain't a competition. It ain't about who's making the most money and doing the most. It's about, you're a team now. You are, partners. Like I said yesterday, you signed a contract. It was a marriage contract, but you signed it. And you're supposed to be partners in this thing together. And that's how it should be. When the woman is regarded as the primary breadwinner, there may be a reversal of traditional gender roles. And, like I say, some men are okay with that. There's men staying at home taking care of kids while women are out working, and there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever the actual division of labor, couples who agree on their assessment of it and who enjoy a harmonious, caring, involved family life are more satisfied than those who do not. So again, if you are not combative with each other, and are happy with each other and happy with your lives, it's like I say, me and my husband's first marriage was fine until everybody else started getting involved in it. You know, until my family started having advice, and his family started having advice, and the guys he worked with started having advice, and the girls I work with started having advice. Then we became dissatisfied with each other in our relationship. But before that, we were perfectly happy. So in reality, the problem wasn't that we became unhappy. It was all these other people put these ideas in our head of what our marriage should look like. And we never should have listened to them because they weren't in our marriage, were they? We were. But because these outside forces were telling us things, we said, oh no, have I, and this is what you think in your head, have I become a fool? Have I allowed myself to be, used or whatever? And if you got two people that are worried about that because they didn't have the best upbringing anyway, they grew up being, used and abused, then they're going to start having that standoffish attitude towards each other. And it's going to take some counseling to get back to the point where, they're not having that playing in their head when marriage ends. And unfortunately, sometimes they do. A popular play in the 1950s was The 7-Year Itch by George Axelrod. They made a movie about it. The title still reflects reality. In the United States, the average marriage that ends in divorce does so after 7 to 8 years. And I actually had somebody taunting me on social media, say, "Oh, you and your man been together 8 years now. Supposedly, they only last 8 years. How long y'all been together?" And it's like, I see your game, whatever. If you're not happy, I'm sorry for that. Not my fault though. Leave me be. The high divorce rate shows how hard it is to attain the goals for which people marry. But the high remarriage rate shows that people keep trying. So most marriages that end, then they also get remarried again to other people or to sometimes the same person. So people believe in marriage. There's still a belief that there can be happy marriages. It just takes work. And it takes you two being in a relationship and not everybody else being in your relationship, because that's only going to mess it up for you. Divorce, more often than not, leads to remarrying with a new partner and the formation of a step family, which includes children born to or adopted by one or both parents before the current marriage. And of course, that's a very common thing nowadays. Divorce. Like I said, unfortunately, here in America, about half the marriages end in divorce. The United States has one of the highest divorce rates in the world. In 2000 and 2001, according to provisional data, about 4 divorces a year occurred per 1,000 people in the population. Nearly half, 43%, of first marriages end in separation or divorce within 15 years. And 90% of separated couples go on to divorce within 5 years. So, like I said, the divorce rate is high. And that's because the no-fault divorce laws have made it easy, for people to check out. A woman born in 1945 to 1954 is almost 3 times as likely to have been divorced as a woman born in 1925 to 1934. Divorce also has skyrocketed in many other developed countries. Now, I think I've told the story about my grandma, whose husband was a monster. And I asked her one time, how come she didn't divorce him? And she said, I was raised that nice women didn't get divorced. And she said, plus I had nowhere else to go. My parents were dead. You know, my brothers are all married and sisters married and have their own family. Where would I go? You know, but she had her own money coming in. She could have gotten, you know, a small place or whatever, but she felt like she kind of, that was her choice. She married this man, and she was going to stick it out. And that was unfortunate because that man let her lay in a bed and go into a diabetic coma, and she never really recovered well from that. She ended up with pneumonia a couple times and a kidney disease. So, you know, sometimes ideas on not getting divorced can be as bad as getting divorced, if not worse. Why has divorce increased? The increase in divorce has accompanied the passage of more liberal divorce laws, which eliminate the need to find one partner at fault. Because it used to be it was your fault or your fault. No fault laws were a response to societal developments that prompted a greater demand for divorce, because it became less and less acceptable for, you know, people to cheat. And if they did, you know, there were laws in the day that either penalized you or made things better for the other person if they could prove you were at fault. So now they have the no fault divorce, so that, you know, that's not, you know, gonna come into play. Because let's face it, just like marriage takes two, divorce takes two. You have to decide to do it. They might have done stuff to make you decide to do it, but you have to decide to do it. So divorce takes two, just like marriage does. A woman who is financially independent is less likely to remain in a bad marriage, of course, because she doesn't feel like she has to. And I've heard women say that, I have nothing, I have nowhere to go, I have to stay. And I hate that, because, you know, whatever you can do, you can go to a homeless shelter for a while, you can get some kind of assistance or whatever. Whatever you can do to save yourself, you know, especially if you have children, you're a mother, then that's what you should do. I mean, if you're 50 years old, oh no, this little thing has popped up on me. Let's see if I can fix this before it goes out. Yeah, I keep forgetting sometimes to plug this sucker on. Alright. Yes, I know, honey, I know. We're fixing it for you. We're fixing it for you. Yes. Animation. Sometimes I talk to things. Alright. And women today are more likely than men to initiate a divorce. And that's because we realize that we do have a choice. You know, we don't have to stay in a bad marriage like our grandmothers might have felt they had to. We have an option to get out and make a better life for ourselves, especially if we're making our life miserable. Instead of staying together for the sake of the children, many embattled spouses conclude that exposing children to continued parental conflict do greater damage. Through research, though research suggests that is not always true. Now, we had a custody battle for 2 years. We filed for divorce in 2005. Our divorce was not filed until 2007, and that's because he wanted them a literal half of the time. I didn't want him to have them a literal half of the time because he was being abusive. But we couldn't prove that because it was a he said, she said according to the law. But he was even wanting to take them a day a week to a school near his, you know, house, and they're like, no, you can't do that. School system's not going to allow you to do that. And he wanted them every weekend. I was like, I want them every other weekend. Anyway, after all that and going to counseling and things of this nature, we finally got the divorce, and he got to have them every weekend, and I had them through the week. I didn't like that. I didn't feel like he needed that much time with them based on his behavior, and I worried about them the whole time. I've got a few gray hairs, and I said that's when I got them. But I worried about him the whole time they were over there with him, because he is neglectful and permissive, just like his mother and father were neglectful and permissive. And when you have young children, you can't be that. They got hurt over there a couple times. They were put in situations I felt were dangerous, and I was stressed out the whole time. And that's why I took extra care of them while they were here, to try and love them all I could, because I was scared to death that something was going to happen to them while they were over there. But the judge said, so many fathers don't want to be involved in their children's life. Since he wants to be this involved in his children's lives, we're going to let him be. But again, I wish they'd listen to me, because there are a few incidents that happened where someone got hurt that should not have ever happened. That situation should not have ever happened. But they're all grown now. They made it and they're okay. So on that one. Oh. And for the increasing number of childless couples, it's easy to return to a single state. Because if you don't have children to worry about and the relationship is not good, then you can just say, you know what, I'm done with this. You're a terrible, horrible person and I'm out. You know, I've had relationships where the person should get an Academy Award for acting because they seemed like this great person. And then you start scratching the surface and it just gets uglier and messier, and you're like, wow. You know, you put on this great first impression, but wow. You know? And unfortunately, that just happens sometimes. People fool you. Perhaps most important, while most people today hope their marriages will endure, fewer expect them to last. So people are more kind of hopeless on that. They're like, well, I'm in love with them now, but, you know, hopefully it lasts. But they don't expect it to. They're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I lived like that for a long time. And now I'm just like, que sera, sera. I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm not going to read stuff into anything and say, oh, here it comes. Oh, no. I'm going to take each day at a time. And if the day comes, then I'll deal with it that day. Indeed, so expectable has divorce become that some sociologists refer to starter marriages, first marriages without children, from which a person moves on as if from a first home. So it's become a thing now where youngsters get married and have their starter marriages, and then they realize, not so much. And they mature a little bit. They learn from that. And that's not good, but it's something that's happening, especially if you marry young. And that's why I keep saying, don't marry young. Don't do it. We did it. It didn't work. Our grandparents did it. It might have worked, but only because they felt like it had to work. So, you know, wait till you're older. Wait for that 30. Then get married. Get yourself figured out. Get your foundation built under you before you start building on top of it and putting other people in the mix. On the other hand, in some ways, young people today may expect too much from marriage because they expect it to be the end-all, be-all. It's going to be marvelous and perfect, our wonderful life together. You know, because they're the young yuppies and they're starting out, and while they're dating, it is all great. And even if they live together, it might be all great. And then they get married and they get a house and bills start coming in, and sometimes mortgage is hard to meet because they spent too much here and there, and then the house insurance comes due and the taxes, and it gets harder, and if the marriage was not that strong, that weight will shatter it. Young adults who live far from their families of origin may expect their spouses to take the place of parents and friends, as well as being confidants and lovers. An impossibly tall order. So if you're expecting everything from your spouse, that's an impossibly tall order. You got family for a reason. You were born into it. They're your family. You didn't have a choice. They just was there. You have friends because that meets a need there. Your friendship. You know, people you work with, work friends. You know, the spouse is there to be your spouse, to be your lover, your confidant, but not all everything to you. Like I say, another person can be a part of your life, but they can't be your life. And if you're that invested into this person that they're your life, then you need to get a life because they can't be. Just don't work. Conflicts between men's and women's expectations may produce tension. Because women are raised, with our little Disney fairy tales, we're the princess, and he's going to ride in on his white horse and rescue us, and we're going to have this wonderful, beautiful, happily ever life. And men think, I'm going to get married to this person and we're going to have this nice, happy life. But they might expect differently. They might expect the wife's going to clean more, or do more for them, cook more. And one of my son's ex-wives never cooked. She couldn't cook. She said she didn't like to cook. My son used to pick her up dinner almost every day and take her home dinner. They didn't bother to cook. They had very little in their fridge. We would laugh about it when we come over there. Well, there ain't nothing in this fridge. A bunch of drinks was about it. So, if that's what you expected from your wife and you didn't get it, you might be kind of upset about that. Finally, divorce breeds more divorce. Adults with divorced parents are more likely to become divorced themselves than those whose parents remain together, because they see that as an option. Adjusting to divorce. Divorce is not a single event. Like a lot of people think, they got divorced, it just happened. I'm going to go off on a tangent here. I am amazed at people who think things just happen. I meet people and, oh, you do, well, that must be nice, or you learn, like one person was talking about ministry and Christianity, and like, I'm a new Christian. It's like, no, I got saved when I was 13. I ran my ministry for 17 years on top of the charity for 9. So, that's a lot of my life. So, I might be new to you. You might not just now have heard about me, figured me out, saw me on, your, Google search or, hashtag search. But trust me, I've been around for a while. I might be new to you, but I'm not new. And that's the thing, divorce doesn't come from one little event. Usually both people are not surprised. Like the other one says, I just want a divorce. The other person's usually not surprised. They usually saw this coming. So there's not like one, thing that usually leads to a divorce. It is a process, a sequence of potentially stressful experiences that begin before physical separation and continue after it. So y'all probably started arguing, maybe some words that were mean got said between you, some little mental and emotional verbal abuse, and that adds up. So like I say, think before you speak to your partner. If you want to be spoken to that way, don't do it. Think of the way you would like someone to say a thing to you. And use I. I feel like this when you do this. I, don't you. Remember, when you're doing you got all these fingers are pointing back at you. So, I feel like, do it that way. Because then that way you're respecting your partner, but you're letting them know how you feel. Ending even an unhappy marriage can be painful, especially when there are children. Because let's face it, when you got children in the mix and you're going to get a divorce, the kids are going to freak out. They're going to blame themselves because kids internalize everything. And they're going to wonder, if I'd have been better, if I'd have been good, would this have happened? And you should tell your kids, it has nothing to do with you. This is all about me and mommy, or me and daddy. And that's nothing to do with you. You're great and I love you. Don't you worry about it. We're going to take care of the grown-up stuff. You just do a good job being a kid. We'll take care of the grown-up stuff. Don't you even worry about it. Because kids will internalize it and they will take this stuff to heart. Even though some people may seem to adjust rather quickly, divorce tends to reduce long-term well-being, especially for the partner who did not initiate the divorce or does not remarry, because they feel rejected, which they have been, honestly. And like I say, there's usually a reason. It didn't just happen overnight. There was stuff that led up to this. So I like to hear men sometimes, oh, I came home and she's like, well, really? No clues before that. There was no verbal abuse, emotional abuse. There was no name calling, no saying I'm unhappy with this situation or whatever. None of that happened. She just like walked in one day and, okay, if you say so. If you say so. Because it's been my experience, it don't happen that way. Reasons may include disruption of parent-child relationships, discord with a former spouse, economic hardship, loss of emotional support, and having to move out of the family home, because all of that might happen when you're getting divorced. Visitation with the kids is always an issue between couples, and that should tell you right there when it is an issue, because there's a lot of I'm gone and lets the mom have the kids. They don't even fight them. But when there's a fight, that shows you that both parents want that child. They love that child. They want that child. So, if there's even a discussion about custody, that should tell you that the other party does love the children. Now, there are folks who use them as a bargaining tool or a tool to hurt the other parent. But, that's not always the case. And again, if you divorce someone, you're probably not going to get along with them. There are couples who amicably divorce. They're friends, whatever. Sometimes they're lovers, but mostly not. Economic hardship, especially if one was dependent. And that's why I say women should have their own money. Men should have their own money. You should not be dependent on your spouse, because stuff happens. Loss of emotional support, needless to say, if your spouse was your emotional sounding board and they're not there anymore and you lost that, and you might have to move out of the family home. A lot of times you have to sell the home, or if you're not the custodial parent, you have to leave. So, you lose your home, you become homeless. Divorce can bring feelings of failure because, this was supposed to be your life and you failed at it. And of course other people think this is, oh, that's a shame, I'm sorry to hear that, and they don't make you feel any better about it. Blame, because spouses blame each other. No, it was your fault. No, it was your fault because you did this, that, and the other thing. Hostility, needless to say, if you're doing that, there's going to be some hostility between you. Self-recrimination, you're going to look back on it. You say, well, maybe if I did this, maybe if I did that, maybe if I spoke up a little sooner, and didn't let this go, you're going to have that. You're going to be thinking back on that, about how things could have been different. As well as high rates of depression, and that is one of the more depressing things in the studies they've done, other than a death, is divorce. So you're going to be depressed because you had this future in mind with this person, and now it's all over. So that is depressing. Illness, because some people, when they get stressed, they get sick, and death, because some people can get so ill they die, and some people commit suicide. Some people cannot handle. My husband worked with a man whose wife left him for another man, and he was not the greatest guy going, but he could not accept that his wife left him for someone else, and so he killed himself. And I mean, that's sad that you're that invested in the relationship. And he even left this big note about how could you do this to me? This is all your fault. I want you to know this is why I'm doing this. And so it's just one last cruel jab at her, So that's a shame. On the other hand, when a marriage was highly conflicted, its ending can improve well-being. And that was the case in mine, because there was a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing. And when the marriage was over, when he was out of the house, the mood in the house just lightened up. It got much better and lighter in here. Me and the children were happy and having a good life, doing our thing, and there wasn't anybody being mean and dragging folks down. So, Mine was a happy divorce. But, you know, not all of them are. And most of them are not. But you know, it all depends on each situation because everybody's different. Every household is different, and every divorce is different. And that's where I'm gonna leave you today. I hope that helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Thanks for watching. Please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. That's all for now. Until next time.